Good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing well this morning. I am on the day after my birthday. I had a birthday yesterday. It was a strange COVID birthday. People kept asking me what I was going to do, and I was like, I don't know, sit in my house with a mask on or something else. It was not that sad, but it is kind of strange, right? Um, but yeah, I'm feeling maybe one day older and one day wiser as I come to you. We'll see if you think I'm one day wiser as we go through class today. So I hope you've gotten your kitchen towel or your strap out. I've got both sitting right here. If you're using a strap, it's good to double it over most of the time so it's not super long and drag it on the floor in your way. But I'm going to show what we start with today using the towel. Um, just for variety. You know, the nice thing about using the towel sometimes is it's a little wider. Like certain things we do, it's nice to have like the width of it, and the strap is not. Um, the nice thing about the strap is it's a little longer for things we do that are longer. So whatever, just letting you know the differences I've noticed. So I'm still going to do those diagonal corners, or I'm going to be holding my strap, and I'm going to wrap it around. And I want the sort of top to be about halfway down the rib cage. I'm trying to get a sense of my mid uh, back, which is basically the lower half of my rib cage. So I want to feel some feedback on that space down there. And that's where the diaphragm is. So the diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle. It's a really important breathing muscle, and it covers the bottom rib all the way about 6 ribs up. So it is this big dome. It goes all the way inside the rib cage, and it is kind of high. I think of it kind of like a mushroom, like it looks a little like a mushroom cap. Um, so as we get to the back ribs, we want to imagine we're sort of in that space. Uh, that kind of captures all of the diaphragm area. So that lower half of the ribs. And then I'm giving the little tiniest bit of a pull here, and enough that I feel like I can feel the towel against as much of my back as possible. And too much feels like it's pushing my rib cage forward, or that my rib cage is having to fight the pull of the towel, or that my arms are working really hard, like my hands are working really far. So it's just enough to feel like, oh, I have a really good sensation through my back ribs, but not so much that it does all that other stuff. Now, if you have the strap, like I said, it's thinner, so you're not going to be able to cover as much of an expanse. That's okay. Find like that, like center of the lower back rib space, and that's just fine as you're holding in this position here. And then bend your knees a little. And as I bend my knees, I have this, it's a little bit of imagination. But as I sit down, I think of like leaning slightly into the strap. And I think of leaning not from my butt or my shoulders, but really like where I feel the strap. I imagine that all kind of leans into it. And I'm not bending a ton, I'm not doing a squat. I'm just settling a little bit. I'm taking a little pressure off the psoas muscle and the lower back muscles, putting it down into my feet and my thighs. And then as you breathe, you're going to try to move the towel a little bit. You're going to try to increase the connection between your back ribs and the towel. So you're going to inhale and imagine expanding into the towel, leaning a little into the towel. And as you exhale, relaxing, not pulling too hard with your hands. Inhaling into your strap or into your towel. And then exhaling. And I do, as I breathe, feel like sometimes my weight shifts the tiniest bit back as the inhale goes into the towel. I can feel the slight difference in my feet. And every time I exhale, I have to think like, oh, don't pull too hard. Just easy connection. One more like that. Now we're going to use that and start a little bit of rounding forward. If you're wondering why we're not using the second camera, is Scott didn't get to have coffee between his classes today, so he had to run upstairs and make his coffee. So I'm just going to turn sideways. I'm making fun of him, and he just walked downstairs. So breathing into your back, into your towel, we're going to start to roll forward. So the head and the upper back start to roll. And as I roll forward, I want to feel my mid back go into the towel a little bit more. I want to feel that space open a little bit. And that's it. Just my head and chest is going to go forward. Nothing else, not too far. I'm going to do the same thing we did a moment ago. Breathing into the back ribs. Feeling that open. And as I exhale, don't pull too hard. And then inhale one more time. Breathe into the towel. Hold that feeling as you unroll your spine back up to standing, like that real fullness in the back ribs. So that's going to be the plan. I'll talk you through it again. So you inhale into the towel, you feel that really fill up. Try to keep some of that feeling as you roll forward. Think of the ribs opening a little more. Even though your chest is going forward, your ribs are going back into the towel. You do a little breath there when you get there. See if you can feel even better sensation through that space. And then the next time you have an inhale, keep that feeling. Try to maintain it as you unroll your spine. Don't pull too hard with your hands. One more time. Breathe into it. Start to roll down and keep the sensation, opening the mid back. Stay here, do a couple breaths. You might feel the upper back start to open too. But keep your attention on the mid back, on that rib place. And then the next time you inhale, keep that feeling. Unroll the spine. And then relaxing. And then we'll take the strap or the towel away and work back, work your way down to your mat to sitting. Okay, so something I've been doing in my Thursday mat class, if you take that class, is working with the towel and the strap around the back of your thigh. So again, one thing that's a little nicer about the towel is that it's broader. It's a wider surface area that gives you connection, whereas the strap is longer, but it doesn't give you as much surface area. So I'm going to do it with my towel. I'm going to do what we just did a moment ago standing, which is to think of the ribs opening up through those back ribs. As you tip a little backwards behind your sits bones, see if you can keep breathing into that space. And then sitting up for a moment. We'll try the same thing again. Now, if you like just using your hands on the backs of your legs, you could do that. The towel's kind of interesting. But if it feels awkward to you, you could go to hands on the backs of your legs. Same position, letting the back ribs open as you inhale. And this time, just keep doing it. Use that feeling of inhaling into your back ribs to roll you down. At some point, your foot will come off the floor, but you don't really have to force that. It'll just kind of happen until you make your way all the way onto your back. And then think of the towel, think of your leg leaning into the towel, basically like we did with your ribs. So take a moment and bounce it, right? Leg is relaxed, doesn't have to be doing anything. And then see if you can find that feeling of this heavy leg leaning into the towel. Widen the elbows. Widen that mid-back place. And as your leg leans into your towel, bring your head up. Keep those back ribs opening. Inhale, feel it a little more. Leg keeps pushing forward. And that brings you up to sitting. So for some people, having this little extra bit of towel is helpful as they do this exercise instead of holding the legs. Okay, sort of going in a lot of directions. Maybe I'm not wiser. Maybe I need to work on 48 a little more. Give me a year. I'll see what I can do. So lean back a little. Find that low back rib opening. Heavy leg in the towel. And it's like the breath inches you backwards. You inhale into the back ribs. It takes you a little more back. Exhale. You inhale into the low ribs. Takes you a little farther. Maybe your foot comes off the floor, but your leg is still heavy until you make it down. And then let's do the same thing again. Nice sort of dead weight. Bounce your leg using the towel. Let it really relax. And then the leg leans a little bit into the towel, right? It doesn't even really push. It just kind of leans a little heavier. If you were standing up and you were leaning against the wall, you're not pushing the wall, you're just letting your weight settle into it. That's where we go with that leg. Elbows go wide. Head comes up. Breathe into the back ribs. Exhale. Leg keeps leaning into the strap to come up. Switch legs. Same thing. Breathe through the back ribs. Heavy right leg. Every time you inhale into the back ribs, it takes you a little farther back. Leg keeps leaning forward. Take it down, bounce it a little. Leg leans in, elbows go wide. Inhale through the back ribs. Lean your leg. Roll up. One more time, switching. A little bounce. Leg leans in, elbows go wide. Breathe through your mid-back. Inhale. Lean the leg as your head comes up. Exhale. Let the back ribs open a little more. Leg keeps leaning forward. So, right, there may be a question of like, okay, you want me to breathe into my back ribs, but you want me to like do this thing with my leg. Why are those two things related? Why are those two things coming up at the same time? So sometimes we talk about this psoas muscle, this deep muscle along the front of the spine that is postural muscle, but it also is connected to nervous system. It's connected to breathing. It's kind of connected to everything. It's connected to hip flexion, which is you lifting your leg up, but it's really, really deep in the body. And so one thing I find that is there's a real strong connection between the back ribs being able to open, the hamstring being able to work, and not grabbing in the front of your hip or grabbing in your psoas, right? And it has to do with how that psoas runs from the front of the spine down to the inner thigh, that it crosses all these joints. It crosses all your lower back joints. It crosses your SI joint. It crosses your hip joint. It's a lot of joints that it can affect. And so if I breathe through those back ribs, basically holds my rib cage in place. It keeps it really steady, really open. I can get my upper abdominals to work. And then I can release the psoas muscle. I can press the hamstring. I can get my quads to let go. All those things are connected. But if I don't breathe into my back ribs, then sometimes what happens when I push my leg forward is it pulls my ribs forward. So that as I push my leg down, my chest comes up. Maybe you've even felt that before. And as I round my spine, my leg comes up. Right? So this happens all the time in the roll down, right? We're trying to round the spine, we're trying to round the spine, and the legs want to come up. Or we're trying to keep the legs down and the ribs get pulled, right? And everything gets like stuck together. So they seem really far away from each other and they're not super close to each other, but there is this connection. If I can breathe through my back ribs, I can generally get my upper abdominals to work, and I have a better sense like of my hamstring supporting me. So that psoas muscle, so my hip flexor muscles don't have to support me. So there's this long kind of indirect connection through there. So let's see what happens with both legs down in the roll up. I don't have my towel anymore, but maybe I still have that feeling of like the leg leaning into something. I'm going to let the back ribs open a little more. And my hands just kind of loosely on my legs, right? And breathe through the back ribs. And as I inhale and breathe through the back ribs, I'm going to let my leg be even a little heavier. I'm going to exhale. Belly takes over. Little roll down. Breathe into the back ribs. Legs get heavier. Exhale. Roll a little more down. Inhale through the back ribs. Exhale all the way down. One leg in. Roll up where you started. Same thing again, just practicing rolling down first. Feet are hip distance, knees are bent, heels in the mat. The breath opens the back ribs. That starts to round my spine. As I round my spine, legs keep leaning into your imaginary towel or into your hands. Exhale. Inhale, back ribs open. Legs stay heavy. Exhale. One more breath to work your way down. One leg comes in, use it to roll up. One more of those. And then resting your legs, resting on the floor. Now, another way we might find this tendency, kind of explore, observe this tendency, is when I'm lying on my back and I stretch my leg up. Sometimes my ribs get kind of pulled up. Or if I'm lying on my back and I push my leg, sometimes it pulls my ribs up. Now my shoulders go down, my ribs go up, that sort of feeling through there. So here we are. Now you could use the towel again. I think it's kind of interesting to use that towel. Let the leg be heavy and supported that way. Or you could use your hands just like I was doing a moment ago. See which feels better to you. I have long arms and a short torso, so my hands work just fine. Sometimes if your torso is long, the towel feels really helpful. Or if your hip is tight, the towel feels really helpful. So I have a heavy leg. I'm going to find my inhale into my back low ribs. And then as I exhale, I'm going to let the leg stay pretty heavy. Same exploration, but now your leg goes up on the inhale. And exhale, bend. So really relaxed leg. Inhale, open the back ribs. Exhale, knee bends. A couple more of these. Next time you go up, leave it there. And then just a little bit of tone in the belly on your exhale. So that's our third piece. Inhale, open the back ribs, keeping the thigh a little bit leaning into the towel. Third piece, exhale, feel your abdominals. And once all those pieces seem like they're in place, we're going to take the towel away, your hands by your side. All those same things as you do the leg circles. Inhale over to the left, exhale, circling the leg. So inhale, back ribs open. Exhale, tone in the belly. Inhale. Exhale. A little bit of that leaning towards the towel. Aware of the back of your leg. Reversing your circle. Inhale. Exhale. One more. And then before you take that leg down, grab your strap, grab your towel, take a moment, do your little kind of bounce. So especially if the front of your hip came on, maybe there's this way you can just get it to let go a little bit there. And then take the right leg down. I don't remember if it was this class. I feel like there was some class recently where I was talking about doing dishes a lot. And now that I'm using this kitchen towel, I feel like I'm just in that place now. Getting the kitchen clean. I need to go check on my kitchen. So grab the towel again or grab your leg. Find your heavy thigh. Little bit of tiny little lean. Not a push, just a little lean of the hamstring into the towel. And then keeping that feeling, find your inhale through your back ribs. Adding a little movement to that. Inhale, the leg comes up. Exhale. Back ribs open as your leg reaches. Heavy thigh. And then leaving the leg up for a couple breaths. As you exhale this time, feel what's going on in your abdominals, that feeling of closing the ribs in the front, and feeling some tone in your belly. And can you get all three pieces to work together? Belly comes on, hamstring has that A little bit of lean, back ribs open. What's the balance between those three things? Once you have it, take the towel away. Start your circle. Inhale, exhale. And then reversing it, paying attention to those three things. Which one's the hardest one for you? Do you get 2 out of 3? Do you get 1 out of 3? It's good information to know. And then the next time you do it, you start in that one that's a little tricky maybe. And then bending your knee. Using that to roll up to sitting. Okay, so we're just going to do a little bit of rolling up and down with both legs on the floor. So what we did a moment ago is we did rolling down, sit up, rolling down, sit up, rolling down, sit up. We didn't really do the rolling up part. So let's do the actual roll up, which will have the rolling down, but we'll also ask you to find that on the way up. So we're going to do same thing, feet flexed, knees bent, hip distance apart, I think is a nice way. I know we often do legs together, but let's do hip distance apart for this. And then pelvis a little curled under. Now up to you how low you go. Pay attention to the hamstrings staying heavy, the feet staying heavy, the back ribs opening, and the abdominals coming on to support you. And when you lose one of those, or you lose that connection, that's your in spot. So whether that's halfway down or all the way down, or some other amount, that's going to be your indicator here. I'm going to show all the way down and up, just to give you a sense of that. So I'm going to find it. Heavy thighs, heavy leaning hamstring, back ribs open. Breathe into it. Inhale. Exhale. And if you're not all the way down, take a pause on your inhale. Exhale. We're all coming up. Inhale. Thighs lean. Back opens. Rolling down. Exhale. A little more belly. Inhale. Back ribs open. Heavy thighs. Exhale. Belly supports you up. 3 more times. Last one. And coming back up. Okay, I'm going to pass the torch here, pass the air pod.
So pass the torch, pass the AirPod, pass the iPad. So I'm really crazy about that back rib work. And in my own life, my own body, this was really revolutionary for helping my knees, which used to hurt all the time, helping my lower back, which used to go out. And when it would go out, I'd be laid up for sometimes weeks at a time. And that back rib work helped to realign my torso and build the core strength that I was lacking in a really revolutionary way. So to continue this thread, let's start off in standing in just kind of a comfortable standing position. And then let your head come forward and let your shoulders come forward. And we're going to mindfully slouch. That could be maybe a marketing term, couldn't it? We're going to practice mindful slouching. Now, one of the things about slouching, maybe you've already felt, is that it spontaneously opens those back ribs, doesn't it? So just like you have been doing, let's take a few deep inhales to open those lower back ribs. All right, so here's a challenge. Keep those lower back ribs open as you lift your head up. Slowly, slowly bring your head up. It's really tempting to lead with your face. See if you can lead from the back of your head. Now, right about here is where those lower ribs tend to push forward, isn't it? Keeping that broadness in your back ribs. Now, the next cue, too, to improve your posture is another one where lower ribs tend to blast forward. So, keeping that broadness, openness in your back ribs. As you lift your shoulders a little bit up, take them a little bit back and down. We'll take a few breaths here. All right, so let's take these ideas and make our way to the floor. Exhale, both arms up. Inhale, folding. Exhale, gorilla. And then inhale, stepping back. We're going to end up in the yoga pose, head down dog. We're going to stay here for a while. So same breathing. Direct the inhale into your back ribs. And use that inhale to create more space in your back ribs. What was a Star Trek space, the final frontier? So for most of us, our back ribs are a frontier. Inhale into that space. And then exhale, coming down. So pausing on hands and knees for the time being, and take a look-see at your hands. And see that the weight is evenly spread on your hands, such that the root of your pointing finger has as much weight as the little finger. And then keeping the weight evenly distributed from the insides of your hands to your outside of your hands. And now slightly bend your elbows. And for most people, when they bend their elbows a little bit, elbows tend to go out toward the side. So to help further open your upper back, take the tips of your elbows and rotate them more toward your thighs. Take the tips of your elbows, the points of your elbows, and rotate them more toward your thighs. Now that's called external rotation. And having externally rotated both arms, notice how the weight tended to go to your little finger side of your hand. See if you can keep the weight on the thumb side of your hand. So we've got this weight distribution on the hands, we have this rotation of the arms. So then, keeping those two the case, as you make your way back to dog pose. And as you take your hips toward that wall back behind you, this gets progressively harder. And there's very often a trade-off that happens. Either the weight goes to the little finger side of the hand, or the hand stays equally weighted and we lose the arm rotation. So see if you can find that meeting in the middle, split the difference. External arm rotation, weight evenly distributed on the hands. And then come on down. All right. So what's the point? Why would we do such a thing? Well, it helps to both create openness, release tension, and to build strength that helps support better posture, healthier shoulders. Now, that being said, this is a really hard thing to do. So we keep the weight on that pointing finger side of the hand, thumb side of the hand, and at the same time rotate the arms to really continue the thread that Collette began for us. So let's try this again. So on hands and knees. So as much weight on the thumb side of your hand as there is on your little finger side of your hand. Then keeping the weight evenly distributed in your hands, externally rotate your arms. And that's where the tips of your elbows more face toward your thighs than toward the side of the room. So keeping the weight distribution, maintaining the arm rotation, as you slowly make your way into dog pose. So as you continue monitoring those two cues, well, maybe you've already noticed that the external arm rotation opens your upper back. And to continue the thread, direct your inhale into that opening to increase that opening. And a few more deep breaths here. And then coming down. So now let's transition all the way onto your back. So one of the fun things about teaching this together, you never really know what Colette's going to teach until she starts teaching it. So this morning I was doing my own workout, and I was catching some ideas on what to work on. And thankfully they were pretty congruent with what we're doing here this morning. So we're going to take a little bit of bridge work here. So begin by lightly drawing your shoulder blades under. But this brings us back to that prior point, doesn't it? That tends to push the lower ribs forward. So just like you worked on before, let those lower ribs settle. And just like you did with the towel, use your breath to reinforce this healthy alignment. Then bring your arms alongside your torso, palms facing down to the floor. And then we're going to work into the shoulder bridge. So start with posterior pelvic tilt, then maintain that posterior pelvic tilt as you lift your hips up, lifting your hips way up. And we're going to hold here for a few breaths. And then slowly, slowly rolling down. So let's take a few breaths here on your back. And then again, initiating the transition of the posterior pelvic tilt. Maintain that posterior tilt of your pelvis as you lift your hips up. And keep that posterior pelvic tilt as you bring your hips way up. And we'll take a few breaths here and notice how your left hip and your right hip are about the same height off the floor. And they pretty much stay the same height off the floor as you roll down. So now that your hips are down, remember how you use the breath into your strap or towel. So same technique here. We'll take a few moments quietly. All right. So we're going to add a layer of challenge here. Same starting point, posterior pelvic tilt. Cultivate that posterior tilt as you lift up. Maintaining that posterior tilt as your pelvis ends up pretty high. Both sides about the same distance off the floor. And see if you can keep that pelvic alignment as you lift your right leg up. Take it straight up toward the ceiling. Then we're going to lower and lift that leg a couple times. Exhale, lowering it down away from you. Inhale up. One more. And bring that foot back down. So ideally, optimally, hips stayed about the same elevation. Keeping your hips steady, stable, as you now take your left leg up. A lot of different ways you can do this. So see if you can keep your hips level as you exhale down. Inhale up. Couple more. Last one. Then bring that left foot down. So in a moment, there's more opportunity forthcoming to open those back ribs. And here's how you access it. Keeping your posterior pelvic tilt, lower your spine down segment by segment. And as you feel your back sequentially contact the floor, let it spread out. So maintaining that thread, that theme of opening your back ribs. And once your hips come down, a few breaths right here. So paradoxically, what we're doing with the back of the body is the pathway to open the front of the body. So let's start moving that direction a little bit more. So rolling to your side, returning to hands and knees. We have some tools in the toolkit to work with your shoulders and reinforce these ideas with the breath. So it begins with weight distribution in your hands, continues with external arm rotation, and then maintaining those two as you make your way to dog pose. And with each breath, broadening your back ribs. Now reach the crown of your head toward your thumbs. Top of your head toward your thumbs. And keeping that openness in your back ribs, keep your neck long as you take your gaze farther in front of you. So this really does become like a dog pose, like a dog getting ready to play. And we'll take a few breaths here, thoracic extension. And letting your head come down. So that's a very similar movement we see in a lot of other movements. For example, gorilla. With the next exhale, step forward. So it's the same thing. Keep your neck long, keep your back ribs open as you reach the crown of your head forward. Maybe you can feel the good movement between your shoulder blades. Inhale, folding, let your head hang. And then rolling up. Segment by segment. Feel how your back opens naturally. And then here's where it gets interesting. Keep your back open as you lift your head up. Keep your back open as you open your chest. That's what I like to call win-win alignment. If you open your chest by congesting your back, that's a zero-sum game. But if you can keep that openness in your back, that alignment, and open up your chest, including upper chest and throat, then it's entirely on the plus column, no minuses. So let's make our way to the floor again. Exhale, arms up. Inhale, fold it. Exhale, gorilla. Here's another chance to work on that juxtaposition. Inhale, back to dog. So you might be wondering, well, what juxtaposition? Well, remember, we're looking to open the back. And keep that openness in your back. Remember how we use the arm cues, the arm rotation to do so. As you then move into thoracic extension, remember that's where you keep your neck long, gaze pans forward. Few breaths here. And then coming down to your knees. All right. So let's fully focus on opening the back. It's sometimes called in yoga the cat pose. And a few breaths here. So when you lift your lower back to the floor, lift your lower back to the ceiling. And then let your upper back and your neck follow that trajectory. Well, spontaneously your back is open, isn't it? So now see if you can keep that openness of your back as you move from spine flexion, to a neutral spine. And now see if you can keep that openness in your lower back ribs. See if you can keep that length in your neck as you move from cat pose to cow pose. Spine extension. So now let's make this more dynamic. Inhale, spine flexion, cat pose. Exhale, spine extension, cow. Inhale, flexion. Exhale, extension. Matching movement to breath. Now, those of you who've done a lot of yoga may be wondering, wait a minute, this breathing is backwards. And that's intentional. For all the reasons that have been unpacked in this session right here. So we're using the breathing to open the ribs. And so inhale when you're doing cat pose opens those back ribs where so many people are congested. And then see if you can maintain that openness as you exhale, move into cow position. Let's do one more. And returning to a neutral spine. Turning your toes under. And then making your way back to dog pose. And this time let your head hang. Standard, typical head down dog. And then come on down. All right, so let's come into sitting. And sitting with your knees bent to your feet flat upon the floor. Nice thing about this positioning here, maybe you already felt it, is how your back naturally opens up. And see if you can keep that openness. As you press your sitting bones down to lift your head up. And finding that balance point where your chest is open, not because you're tensing your back, but in addition to opening your back, win alignment. So now to move into a spinal twist, bring your right leg under, catch hold of that front leg, and reinvigorate that downward flow of your sitting bones to create the upward lift of your head. And right arm comes around, left hand behind. And see if you can maintain all these elements as you twist. One more deep breath here. And then turning back to the middle. And reset. Both knees bent, both feet upon the floor. And then sitting bones root down to lift up to the crown of your head. And then the other side. So left foot comes under. Both hands catch that front knee. Left arm this time comes around. Other arm behind. Steady breathing. And then turning back toward the middle. And then joining your soles. And that can be interpreted any of a number of different ways. So let's interpret it the foot way for the time being. The best you can, touching the soles of your feet together. Rather than focusing on taking your knees down to the floor, take your knees away from each other. Now certainly that's going to open up the inside of your leg. See if you can also lengthen the outside of your leg. So imagine you're going to lengthen your IT bands on the undersides of your legs by taking your left knee to the left and your right knee to the right. Few breaths here. And lifting your legs up. Taking both your feet forward. Exhale, both arms up. Inhale, folding. Steady breathing. And then with the next exhale, rolling up. And then resting on your back. So it's been a lot of cueing, and that sure can be useful to help realign the body and to very consciously build core strength. And it's really good quite often at the end of a session like this is to take a few moments and let your body be supported by the floor. And then let any of the cues drop away. As useful and helpful as those alignment points may have been, let them fall away. There's such a deep wisdom embedded in your body. And over the past hour or so, there's been a lot of input into your body. So here's a chance for your brain to surrender control and hand that control over to the wisdom of the body. And trust that your body is going to remember what's going to be useful. It's going to let go of what maybe is not useful. And so for our last few moments, your brain often likes to control the body, and explore what it may feel like to hand some of that control back to the body. A practice of trusting your body. And we'll take a few more breaths here. And then if you've closed your eyes, now opening your eyes. And then coming up to sitting. Really glad you could join us. So if you haven't had a chance to check out our website in a while, please feel free to do so. PilatesOnHarrison.com, ScottAndersonYoga.com. So we have a lot of programs, a lot of classes. Maybe you're already a subscriber. You get unlimited access to our classes each week, every week. Maybe you want to check it out. We also have a pay what you can program because we know that kind of all over the place where we are in terms of resources, we want to make sure that these programs are available for anybody who would like to access them. So really glad you could join us. Any questions in the chat box? Not this morning. Let's do this again really soon. Bye-bye.